What is up, everybody? Welcome in. New edition. Breakaway Bandits podcast here on the Sports Insanity Network. Sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood. I am Mike Rifkin. Hope everybody is doing well on this February 18th. And we got more Olympic hockey to talk about. So here's the plan for tonight. We're going to recap the quarterfinal games that took place today. And what a day of hockey it was. And we are then going to preview the semifinal games that will be played Friday on the men's side. And we will preview the gold medal game between the U.S. women and the Canadian women, which will air tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock. But let's start with what happened today on the men's side. We had all the quarterfinal games played today, single elimination. You're done, you're done. And we had 3 overtime games. We'll start with the one that ended last, and that was the United States prevailing 2-1 in overtime over Sweden on a game-winning goal by Quinn Hughes, who I think has been the best player on the U.S. team this whole Olympics. He's been all over the ice. He's been so dynamic. Playing his game, which the Americans truly missed during the Four Nations last year. He didn't play due to injury. He's coming to this Olympics, and he has been phenomenal. He factors in on both goals. He had a goal and an assist today. He probably led the team in ice time again, which he's done the whole tournament. I don't have those numbers in front of me. But this was not the best performance from the U.S. Give Sweden a ton of credit because the U.S. early on got off to a really good start in the first period. I think 1-point shots were 6-1. Part of that got to do with the U.S. had an early power play they couldn't convert on. But they got chances. They were playing physical. Jacob Markstrom was really good on the other side. He made 38 saves on 40 shots. So it took the Swedes a little bit to get their game going. First period ends scoreless. Second period was a different story. I thought the Swedes got the better of the U.S. during the second period. They hemmed them in the zone a couple of times. Connor Hellebuck was really good. He bailed the U.S. out. It took a little bit for the U.S. to establish their forecheck in the second period. And when they did, they get an offensive zone face-off. They run a set play. Quinn Hughes sets up Jack Hughes for a one-timer. And to the front of the net with the deflection was Dylan Larkin. And that was the first goal of the game. Brian Boucher made the point on the broadcast. If Markstrom moves up, or if he notices Larkin off to the side, he might move up a step, and that puck probably hits him and doesn't go in. But he doesn't. Larkin gets the deflection in front. The U.S. lead 1-0. And then the third period, the U.S. played, I thought, a decent third until about the 5-6 minute mark. The Swedes just kept pushing. The U.S. fall into a shell defensively where they're just bending but not breaking. Eventually they break. Lucas Raymond makes an unbelievable pass to Mika Zibanejad for a one-timer that beat Connor Hellebuck with about 90 seconds left. You couldn't even get mad at Hellebuck for it because it was a heck of a shot. But the U.S. got hemmed in, and they went into this defensive shell that just doesn't work. They had to keep pushing the pace. They didn't. Zibanejad eventually capitalized. Prior to that, the Swedes had a power play. And Philip Forsberg of Nashville had a couple of really good looks, and Eddie Olczyk brought it up on the broadcast too, and he's looking to dish. And I'm just they're going, no, you're Philip Forsberg. You're a 30-goal guy, a 40-goal guy. Snipe it. You could snipe it. If I didn't have a rooting interest, I would be saying that. But, He does, and he tries to feed it the U.S. You know, hunkered down a little bit, but although you couldn't play that shell, and a guy who got caught out on the ice again was JT Miller. And listen, I know he could be a good player on the penalty kill. He could bring a physical presence, but to me, I think for the semifinals, I think I'm going to trust Kyle Connor. I've got enough nastiness on this team, especially if Charlie McAvoy plays the way he did today. He was extremely physical. I think I would scratch JT Miller, put Kyle Connor back in because this team, look, I know they put up some numbers in the round robin preliminary rounds, but when it goes and gets tough, listen, they're gonna be able to still win games like this, 2-1, 3-2. But they need guys who can put the puck in the net. They just don't. I just don't think there's enough skill. And then overtime, about 3:27. Quentin Hughes, who, by the way, prior to this, waves the bench off on a change, gets a pass from Matt Boldy. Austin Matthews makes a really nice little drive by on the defense, saying a little pick. Quinn Hughes able to snipe it off the post and in, beating Jacob Markstrom for the winner. Um, Quinn Hughes has been, I'll say it again. I think the two best players for the U.S. overall in this tournament have been Quinn Hughes and Brady Tkachuk. Brady, I don't think was great in this game. I think the best forward in this game. Some people may point to Jack Hughes. I thought Dylan Larkin was really good in this game. Face-offs, had some chances, had jump. I thought Dylan Larkin, and I thought you saw that as the game went along. Like Mike Sullivan found ways to get Dylan Larkin more ice time. Um, I think that was important too because I thought Larkin was really good. He got the first goal off the deflection, and then just thought that got him. I thought even in the first period he was noticeable. In other games, like that third line wasn't getting the big minutes. Um, and he gets elevated. They elevate Jack Hughes a little bit too in this game, which they need to keep going with. Not that the Hughes, Miller, Brock Nelson line isn't anything really good. Brock Nelson, I think, has played very well. I don't think JT Miller's played great again, but Jack Hughes had some jump. Larkin had some jump. Those were probably the outside of Connor Hellebuck, who I thought was good. McAvoy was physical, and just Quinn Hughes again. Like he's been so good, and that's why the Norris conversation this year is outrageous because of what he's doing since he went over to Minnesota, what Cale Makar's doing in Colorado, and then you throw in Quinn Hughes' teammate here, the Olympics, Zach Werenski. I mean, call the Norris Trophy vote is going to be tough. But all in all, this was not a great out. I don't think the U.S. played a great game. Give the Swedes credit. The one thing I don't understand, and they didn't mention this on the broadcast, but Jesper Bratt didn't play a shift in the first two periods. He did play a little bit in the third. He had jump. So I just don't understand the purpose of benching a guy. Victor Hedman apparently sustained an injury during warm-up. Hopefully that's not serious for Tampa Bay. That would be massive. But now that the Swedes are going home, he'll get a little bit more time to recover as the NHL season doesn't start back up till next Wednesday. So we'll see what happens there with Victor Hedman. But look, the U.S. get a win. They deserve it. It's debatable. They do have some things they gotta clean up. When they gotta clean out some of their exits. They gotta find some ways. And they need one of these two guys I'm about to name to step up a little bit offensively. And both have had chances. They just haven't been able to put the puck in the net. They need more out of Matt Boldy, who's got a goal, but they need a little bit more. Yeah, and he's played well. I'm not denying that. They just need more offense. That's why I think you got to put Kyle Connor in this lineup. Kyle Connor is a guy who could put the puck in the back of the net with one shot. They could use more out of Boldy. They can use a lot more out of Jake Gensel. That's the guy to me. Like, I'm looking at and I'm going, if there's a guy who needs a big game, it's Jake Gensel. Because I think that the Chucks, as good of offensive players as they are, they're playing in a different role here. They're physical. They're in on the forecheck. Do you want a little bit more offense out of them? Sure, I'll take it. But they're being effective in other ways. I think Boldy has played well for the most part. You just need a little bit more offense out of him. Gensel has had chances. He's just got to bury one. And now you're moving on to you're in the semifinals. Those two guys have one goal each. I think that is what you would take if you're Mike Sullivan and company. You got to find a way to get offense going. Um, and this is why we had the conversation. Like, where is a Cole Caulfield or a Jason Robertson? This is kind of why. This is the game. Where, yeah, you put up 40 shots, but you scored twice. Luckily for you, that was enough today. Well, you got so lucky against Slovakia. I don't know. I do not know. So the U.S. moves on. Again, they'll play the Slovaks. The Slovaks beat up on the Germans today, 6-2. This one showing from the Germans, I felt. Pretty good team. Leon Draisaitl, JJ Peterka was -4 today. Stutzla was a -4. Dominic Cahoon was a pretty good player. You had Grubauer in goal. But for the Slovaks, listen, they got some talent over there too. The Slovaks. So we'll see what happens when they play the U.S. The other other semifinal will feature Canada and the Finns, the Canadians. Let's get into that. The Canadians and the Czechs was a heck of a game. And for a while, we thought we might have an upset, a massive upset. Um, get the box score up. The Canadians went 4-3, but they were trailing after one. They were trailing 2-1 after one. Goals by Sedlak and David Pastrnak. Excuse me. Gave the Czechs the lead. Nathan MacKinnon scores on the power play to tie it in the second on what was a very soft call. Didn't love the call. And then at 12-18 of the third period, Andre Palat on a goal that not probably, shouldn't have counted because the Czechs had too many men on the ice. The officiating in this game was not great. A word like that. I'll get into why. The Czechs had too many men on the ice, but Thomas Hertl makes a great block, transition. Marty Natchez with a beautiful drop past Andre Palat, who just straight up buries one past Binnington. Right in front of his old coach, John Cooper, to give the Czechs the lead. And then at 16:33, Nick Suzuki deflects a Devontae shot past Lucas Dostal, who was really good. Despite giving up 4 goals, Dostal is one of those guys, like, he plays in Anaheim, so not everyone's going to know him, but he's turning into a pretty good goalie. And the Ducks have finally been able to move off of John Gibson to give him some starts, and he's been good. And then 90 seconds into overtime, Mitch Marner took a drop pass from Macklin Celebrini, danced right around 3 checks, beat Dostal for the winner. So Mitch Marner came through for the Leafs. So the Canadians win. So so there's 2 storylines I'm going to hit on. The officials are going to come second because the first major storyline, and this is not good for Team Canada. Sidney Crosby got hit back to back by Radko Gudas and Marty Necas. Landed a little awkwardly on his leg. Didn't look great. John Cooper does not think it's going to be serious. We'll wait and see. But if Sidney Crosby can't go, that's a big loss because Sidney Crosby's had a very good tournament, as has Macklin Celebrini, and really anybody wearing a Canadian uniform. But man, Mitch Marner coming through for the Canadians. That's massive. That's massive for him and his confidence, especially going forward because Vegas will make the playoffs. I think the other thing, like, it's kind of funny seeing how Leaf fans react to that because they're like, "Why couldn't he do this for us when he was a pretty good Leaf?" Toronto, he was a good Leaf. You may want to complain, but you know what? You have other players too who haven't come up in big moments, but it's a huge goal for Marner, especially Sidney Crosby's down. That's a guy who's going to have to step up. So we'll see what happens with Sidney Crosby. The other thing, again, the officials. A couple of things I didn't love. Again, there was too many men on the play with Palat scoring. There's a breakaway for Marty Necas in the third period where he clearly, before he breaks, he gets hooked. Nothing called. Dostal gets hit. Nothing called. The power play goal that the Canadians score on in the second period, Nathan McKinley, a little bit soft for my liking. So I think, look, I don't want to harp on the refs. They're not the whole reason the Czechs lost. But if you're going to be consistent, like, the penalty that gets called is very soft. And if you go through it, so we'll see what happens. But power plays were 3-2 for Canada. But I mean, I just didn't love the officiating. I'll be blunt. But the Canadians move on. They're going to play the Finns. And the Finns are moving on because they beat the Swiss 3-2 in overtime as well on a game winner by Arturi Lehkonen. But they trailed 2-0 after the first period. Got 2 goals in the third, one from Sebastian Aho, one from Miro Heiskanen. And the Finns move on. So they'll play the Canadians. UC Saros, solid start again. Saros versus Binnington. And then Hellebuck versus Slovakian goal, who's been pretty good himself. Let me just read off the name really quick because I'm blanking on it. Helvage. And I hope I said that right. So those semifinals will be played Friday. Sunday will be the gold medal game. And for some reason, it's Sunday at 8 o'clock in the morning. but I'll digress on that. The other thing we got to talk about, we got to talk a little bit here about what tomorrow is. And tomorrow will be the gold medal game between the U.S. women and the Canadians. Remember, the U.S. defeated the Canadians uh, in that round robin kind of preliminary play, being 5-0. Throw the game out the window. It's going to be a different game. The Canadians are looking for revenge. They're going to have their captain, Marie-Philippe Poulin. She is going to be playing. That is going to be big for the Canadian psyche. But I'll say this about the U.S. I think one of the biggest, I think you could throw that game out, but you got to look at the last two games. Game against Italy, game against Sweden. They didn't get frustrated because the goalies for both Italy and Sweden kept their team respectively in it for a long period of time. That's important because it shows the U.S. aren't gripping their sticks tight. They're not, weren't getting, while they may have been getting frustrated, they weren't showing it. But they've played great. The U.S. women have been awesome. The depth that they've shown, they're not just relying on one or two players. I think that's a little bit different from the men. I think the men are a little heavily reliant on a couple of guys. Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel. Hey, you guys were top picks. Let's go. The women, no, there's a lot of depth. The young players have brought a lot of speed. That's the other thing about this team. They're playing with a lot of speed. And that's something that, if you've watched the games, like their breakouts are so clean. Their transition game is second to none. And even when they don't score on a transition play, it's clear like they get a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2. They're getting a quality look. They're not shooting just for the sake of throw it at the net. They're going quality over quantity, but they're getting plenty of quantity. That's important too. And it's coming from everywhere. The forwards are getting looks. The decor. The decor is not afraid to shoot. Layla Edwards, Keller. They are jumping in the play. And I think that's one of the keys, I think, in this game. If Canada can slow down the U.S., and I don't mean the speed, but the breakout, maybe the tempo. If you can control the tempo, if you're Canada, that's important. They're going to want to slow it down and grind you down. Where the U.S., they want to go fast. And I think this is a game where you look at someone like Hannah Bilk or Joy Dunn, who've been phenomenal in this tournament. This is the game. But this is also the game where you look at someone like Hillary Knight in her fifth Olympics. And this is the game you go, all right. She broke the record for goals for an American in the Olympics. Can she do? Does she have that one more moment in her? I think this is a really interesting game because for the first time you're seeing a team for the second time. So let's see what happens. And the other thing is this for the US, from a US point of view, they've been very disciplined in this Olympics. They need to keep that going. And the other thing I would say too, and this is going to be so I hate the fact that I'm going to say this because it's like broadcasting 101. But the first goal is so important because you dictate the pace. You can dictate a lot of things if you score first. But I love the way the Americans have played. They are playing with a tenacity too. They're playing physically. They're not really walking the line. They're playing physical up to the point where you can be physical. And they're playing a smart game. Physical, they're not overly physical. They're not overly aggressive. But when they get that opportunity to pounce, they're pouncing. You just hope the nerves of the gold medal game doesn't get to some of these young players because there's going to be a lot of nerves. They may want to change up a little bit early in this game. Hey, we're going to play a little bit more dump and chase as opposed to, hey, we're going to go all out. Maybe they do change that. I don't know. But I think I'm very intrigued to see what they do. I think the United States, they definitely got a fighter's chance. We'll see who steps up. I think the major X factor is going to be the young players. And I think if the young players step up like they've been doing, I think Team USA can win this game. I think for Team Canada, they've been there, they've done it. I think they're thinking all the pressure's on the Americans because they've won gold. They've been winning golds. The Americans haven't won gold, I believe, since '98. So that's going to be the moment. Can the United States women, the young players, can they have the moment? All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Olympic Hockey Report edition Breakaway Bets podcast, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood Sports Insanity Network. Like, comment, subscribe here. Follow us on the socials, Facebook, Sports Insanity Network, Twitter, S Insanity Real. Follow me personally on Twitter, Master Rifkin, same name on Blue Sky. Go to the sportsinsanitynetwork.com. Great blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles as well. I'll be back to do one of these Friday night. Recap the semis for the men, preview the men's final, and I'll recap the women's gold medal game as well. So everyone take it easy. Have a good one, and I'll see you Friday night.